Hey, Daniel from GrowYourMusicStudio.com here. So, was going to write an email today about group lessons and specifically group curriculum. And as I got into writing it, the email was just getting longer and longer, and I realized I have a lot more to share than could reasonably put in an email. So I thought it would be better, more informative, perhaps more entertaining, if I made a video as opposed to writing an email out. Now, let me just start by saying that in the topic of group curriculum, early on in my studio, when I was considering doing group lessons, I did consider a group curriculum, and I looked into it. I ultimately rejected it. I do want to be clear. I did not reject group lessons. I rejected a group curriculum. And the reasons for this, having looked at several, the major ones out there, was those group curriculums posed a gigantic problem for me as the owner of a smaller studio. Okay, it was never my dream to have a 1,000-kid studio. I had friends, acquaintances who had larger studios, and because of the margins, they were bringing home a small amount each month. Wasn't my desire to get into that, because what I devised, what my plan was, what my dream was, is it possible to earn six figures and work part-time hours if you do it from your home or like a small rented location? I ran the numbers, and it looked very much like I could. And so the only thing stopping me from making this a reality was actually understanding how to teach group. So naturally, the first place I went was to group curriculum. And the problems I discovered were a no-go for me. They were conversation stoppers. The main problem I encountered was that a group curriculum forced kids to march in lockstep. The idea was that every child was going to get a particular lesson from the teacher each week. The various levels that were present in my studio would all have to meet at the same time, and I was going to have to instruct them all. Well, if you've been in the music education industry for any amount of time, you know that the idea of getting all of your level ones to show up at the same time on Tuesday night, or even giving several options, this time on Tuesday, this time Wednesday, this time Thursday, there's always going to be that one family that says, oh, we can only come Friday at exactly 4:15. Now that's a little bit of an exaggeration and maybe a problem that can be easily overcome, but it highlights a problem that I already foresaw and did some initial investigation around, which was it was going to be almost impossible to create a schedule in which every child could show up at the time. And this only gets worse as the kids get into higher levels. So there was already that problem. The other problem was that kids show differentiation very quickly in education. And here's what I mean. All it takes is one kid getting sick for a week or two, or multiple kids getting sick, and now the entire group is off. And the benefit of the group curriculum, the benefit of the group system is then lost, because now you do have differentiation within the group, and you're having to catch this kid up, and meanwhile you're holding this kid back. Now, if it seems like I'm talking a lot about scheduling, it's because the way most group curriculums are set up, they don't address the scheduling issue, or they give band-aid fixes. The dream that I had, what I wanted to make happen was, would it be possible to circumvent this problem entirely? Yes. And this is where I kind of devised this idea of, well, what if I could do a multi-level group system? What if it doesn't matter what level that a child's in? What if it doesn't matter if this kid is super motivated and is flying through their books, and this kid over here comes from a type B family, casually playing, is overcommitted in sports? What if it doesn't matter, the unique personality of each child, the intellectual capacity of each child, the age of each child? We all know a 10-year-old is going to move faster than a 6-year-old, holding a couple things in constant. What if none of that mattered? And this is kind of the inspiration that I had. This was the dream that I had. And so I came up with a series of rules that would allow me to take any method book in the world and use it in a group format. So I rejected the idea of a tracked group curriculum and said, what if I could just take any method in the world and teach it in a group format? And furthermore, what if I could take any level from that method and each child have their own experience in the context of that group environment? And that's what I went to work on. And I created a series of rules for myself. There were things that had to change in the way that I was teaching. It really forced me to up my game educationally. When you're having to juggle 4 kids, which is what I started with, I eventually moved to 5 and could have moved to 6 had I had the room. I didn't have the room to do 6 kids, but I started with 4. And, honestly, at the beginning, and I've said this before, at the beginning, 4 was a challenge, but it's because I needed to improve as a teacher to make those kids able to handle that group environment. So this is how I circumvented the group curriculum problems that I mentioned there. Do you lose anything by not using a group curriculum? Do you lose a community aspect? This is what a lot of teachers are concerned about. Oh, I'm afraid that I'm going to lose the interpersonal connection with the child. Or they just assume that since all the kids are in a group, well, they're all in a group, of course they have to interact. To me, the most educationally valuable thing I can do for a child is give them a solid, peaceful hour of time where they can work with the instrument. Early on in my career, I did do, or in my group career that is, I did do a fair amount of enrichment things, worksheets, kids playing games together. Earlier on, a lot more of the kids in my studio were in the earlier stages of the method book series that I was using. And so since they were all closer together, it was educationally valuable for me to review concepts with kids who are maybe in the next level up. Meanwhile, the kids that were in that current level were learning it for the first time. It was educationally valuable to play a game where I was reviewing concepts, in those early levels of any method. But over time, what I saw was just giving kids a solid hour of time to learn as much music as possible under my supervision would give them a leg up at home. And what I began to really see over time was the fact that an hour with me in the studio was probably as effective as 2 or 3 hours at home. So kids just started flying through their books. And what I will say is that I don't see how a group curriculum specifically designed to help kids move together in a group environment can hold a candle to unlocking the natural potential of a child, unlocking their sight reading ability, and letting them go at whatever pace they want. And all things being equal, if their scores are coming back on an achievement test at a very high level, they're at a very high level in an achievement test score, someone explain to me how that's a bad thing. I doubt someone could. And I realize that, one could say, oh, well, achievement tests don't do anything. I'm sorry, achievement tests don't measure everything. I realize that. I think it definitely depends on the achievement test you choose, which is why I use one of the more high quality ones, an internationally respected one that tests many different facets of musicianship. And I was prepping 60 kids a year for that achievement test in a group context. And those scores were coming back better every year. So this is why I shied away from a group curriculum. The major ones out there and smaller ones. And again, I'm going to define that as a curriculum that requires all the kids or adults in the group to be at the same level or about the same level. And they're all learning the same concept and there's group instruction. That's why I shied away from choosing to go towards a multi-level approach where each student, whether adult or child, was having their own unique experience and was given the freedom to explore and to learn and to progress at their own rate in the context of my group environment, which was a very peaceful environment. If you were a fly on the wall in that room, you'd think 5 kids in there, they're probably bouncing off the walls. It was actually a very quiet, calm environment. We used headphones. Each kid was having their own experience. And the rules that I devised to help me manage that classroom, that was what made the difference. And that's why I could use any method in the world and used, I had my favorite, but if I had a transfer come in, I would use their method for a while. I wanted them to, to feel comfortable. I didn't want the transition to be too overwhelming at first. Incidentally, this is the same way that I've taught 270 plus studios to do it at this point. As of today, it's 270 plus. In the future, it's probably going to be more. What will be more. And what's interesting is I initially started this for piano only. And the initial group of people who took the training from me, 14 brave souls, took a chance on this crazy idea 5 years ago now. And over time, more and more people added. And as more people joined the training, we had multi-discipline studios, multi-instrument studios come for piano. And as they learned the principles, they realized, well, actually, we can apply, this really well-defined set of educational principles. We can actually apply that to guitar too, or violin, or to drums. So now we have over a half dozen instruments represented that have gone through the training. And, to great success, dozens and dozens of guitar studios and things of that nature. So again, as I wrap up here, this is why I elected not to use a group curriculum. And this is how I solved the problem that group curriculums posed. And all it required was a minimum 10 by 10 space, enough instruments for each child, some headphones, and a set of rules that I took several years to craft. And that I've now taught to, going on 300 studios. And it's what allowed me to work 20 to 25 hours a week, depending on the semester, and make well over 6 figures a year, and still provide an educationally valuable experience for children. And maybe the most important thing of all, it's up there. It's hard to be that dogmatic. Because I think people have varying educational objectives. But for me, if a child was not having to repeat songs over and over again, but was literally getting a song, 2 songs, 3 songs, 4, 5, 6, 7 songs all in 1 week and passing them within 1 week, and then going on to a brand new batch of songs, passing those in a week, next batch of songs, pass it. When children were becoming so skilled at their craft that they were passing songs that fast, and they were doing so with great musicianship, very little stress, casual environment, fun environment, to me that's better. That speed that they were going through that material is a sign that something was going right. I don't think speed for its own sake is a value that a teacher should pursue, but when that speed is a byproduct of the educational quality, it's worth mentioning. And what I will say is that for any child that I could have seen one-on-one for a half hour, or could have had them in a group for an hour, I don't care. I would always have that beginner in a group because they would move faster. You cannot detach the educational environment that a child is learning in from the result that they get. And that casual environment where there was a perfect blend of independence and support, where it was helping them to identify with the instrument more, where it was helping them to take ownership, even a 6, 5, even a 4-year-old, take ownership over their own skill. That's huge. And so that environmental factor, I'm now kind of going a little bit off the off the reservation here. That I want to keep it to the group curriculum, but it's hard to decouple all of these concepts from one another. They're all interconnected. The environment, the curriculum, how you're teaching the child, and all these things, blended into a very wonderful recipe that had kids moving through the books very quickly, getting high scores on a really well-respected international achievement test, and having fun while doing it in a casual environment. So anyway, I hope this is helpful. If you have questions, you can leave them down below. Comments, maybe even criticisms. Would love to have a discussion. Started doing it in this way in 2008, and have seen it all at this point. And maybe I'll end with this thought. For a very, very long time, I just struggled to get kids to perform at the level I knew they could perform at. Then the group thing enters the picture. Struggled with that for a while. Got better. Really, it was me getting better, able to handle the demands of a group environment like that. And if I go back in time and give myself the principles, I would have cut that time much, much shorter, much like our trainees do. They don't take nearly as long to get to that level of competence. It got to a certain point where the environment, the classroom was so fun and relaxed, and there was such a spirit of excellence about, the kids. My wife can attest this. I would leave at least once a week. I would leave my piano room and say, I can't believe I get paid to do this. This is so much fun. Very different from the first 5 years that I taught. And I would wish that on anyone. So anyway, hope this video is helpful. If you have questions, like I said, leave them below. Comments, criticisms, leave them below.